The story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story, that's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
You know, I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitation became an issue in the last 4 years when this is...
All right, everyone, did you catch that? Tom Homan, a man who spent his career dealing with border enforcement and national sovereignty, just dropped a bombshell. We're now talking about potential immigration fraud allegations involving a sitting member of Congress. These claims about Ilhan Omar have circulated for years, but hearing someone with Homan's background say he's reviewed the files adds a new layer to the conversation. While Omar continues to speak out on constitutional rights and America's founding principles, Homan presents himself as someone focused on enforcing existing immigration laws he argues are being undermined by progressive lawmakers. In this breakdown, we'll look at Omar's response, how major media outlets are framing the story, and why supporters believe Homan represents a tougher approach to border policy. This debate is heating up fast, so let's dive into the rest and see how it unfolds.
Under this president and the job that you're doing.
This is certainly not what the founding fathers of the American dream were thinking about when they said, that when they set out to write the Constitution.
Unlike the Biden administration, we're following the Constitution. We're enforcing the law. We're not ignoring the law. And you're right. The proper, assimilation is important, and it's going to be required. Not only that, when they come here under a legal program, they're required to be self-sufficient. They have to prove they're self-sufficient. So, so a lot of them, first thing they're doing to get here is get on the public dole. President Trump put his foot down, and like I said earlier, we're doing a deep dive on thousands and thousands of files, and we'll hold people accountable. I'm so tired of them pulling the race card all the time,
right.
Because we're doing this racist. ICE has arrested people from 180 different...
Trump mentioning the Daily Mail reporting from 2020 that Ilhan Omar married her brother to get into the country. This was last week. Take a listen.
Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud.
Calls that a fraud. It's a story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story. That's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitation became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up. Who was president? Who ran DOJ? So pulling the records now, pulling the files, and we're looking at, but this fraud investigator, who I know personally, one of the best fraud investigators in HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, said there's no doubt he reviewed the file. So I'm running that down this week, matter of fact, and we'll see.
It's tremendous that, and according to the Secretary, Kristi Noem of DHS, she said nearly 50% of the visas are fraudulent in this community. That would mean that half the Somali refugees are here in some way illegally. What's going to happen? Is something actually going to happen? Are there going to be people stripped of their visas, deported? Are we going to see that?
Absolutely. Those days are over. Thank God President Trump's in the White House. We're going to look at all of them. We're going to look at those here illegally, of course. We're going to look at those here under a visa or some sort of, immigration process that are criminals. We're going to look at the national security threats. But those who came through a process that weren't properly vetted, who didn't provide documentation, who slipped through the Biden's weak processes on, giving visas and temporary, whether student visas or visitors visas or whatever. We're going the whole gamut. President Trump has instructed us to go down and we're going to deep dive all of this. And we're going to hold people accountable. So yes, there are going to be multiple deportations coming. Absolutely.
There's so many claims of a racist element to this story. And when we're talking about a certain subsection of refugees into this country, but it bears reminding to people that it wasn't very long ago at all that Americans expected that people that came to our country would contribute to the cause, would assimilate to our culture and to who we are. And we're just not seeing that at all in this community. We're seeing a community that's largely hostile to our culture, wants to bring in an Islamic culture into our nation, while doing so and staying vastly on the dole, on some kind of assistance.
Let's unpack what we just watched, because there's a lot going on here. In that clip, Ilhan Omar questions whether strict immigration enforcement reflects the vision of America's founding principles. Critics strongly disagree, arguing that the country was built on the rule of law and that those laws should apply equally to everyone. For years, allegations about Omar's past immigration history have circulated in certain political circles, though no court has convicted her of wrongdoing. Supporters of renewed scrutiny argue that if credible evidence exists, it should be reviewed like any other case. Opponents say the claims have been investigated before and found lacking. That's where the debate sharpens. Tom Homan, former acting ICE director, positions himself as someone focused purely on enforcement. He argues that immigration law is colorblind and that compliance with legal processes, not identity or background, is what matters. His broader point is about consistency. If fraud is committed, whether by a citizen or a non-citizen, there should be consequences under the law. At the same time, rhetoric matters. Phrases about sending someone back can be interpreted very differently depending on who hears them. For some, it signals accountability. For others, it raises concerns about targeting political opponents. That tension is part of why the issue becomes so heated. The larger question is about standards and institutions. Should any public official face renewed investigation if new evidence emerges? Absolutely, that's how accountability works. But those investigations must be grounded in verifiable facts, not speculation. And immigration policy itself remains one of the most divisive debates in the country. Enforcement versus reform, border security versus humanitarian protections, assimilation versus multiculturalism. So the real discussion isn't just about one lawmaker. It's about how a nation balances sovereignty, fairness, and constitutional principles, and whether political rhetoric helps clarify that debate or inflames it further. Where do you stand? Should these files be reopened if there's credible evidence, or should this chapter remain closed absent new proof?